of settlement statements, et cetera, et cetera. Make sense?
What was the one exception that was 3 days, not the money?
Well, the 3-day rule regarding paper, it had to do with the working with real estate agents brochure. What happens if someone calls you and you can't get it to them earlier, mail it to them within 3 days? That's the only time paper is currently 3. Let's see, delivery of instruments. Retention of records. How long will you keep your records, your contract files, et cetera, et cetera? You keep it 3 years from when?
End of activity.
The last day that you do business with them. The last day that you do business with that person. You remember me telling a story about a guy I met on the steps of one of my listings. We went over the Working with Real Estate Agents brochure. I showed him the house. He never even signed the Working with Real Estate Agents brochure. He refused to sign it. I had one document. I never saw him again. I had one document that he refused to sign, and I kept it for how long?
3 years.
3 years from that day. Okay, eventually I was able to destroy that. Brokerage fees and compensation. Ooh, this is a good rule right here. You can go ahead and put a star beside this. The lecture I'm going to give you on it now is going to be unsatisfying because we spent a ton of time talking about this rule. Disclosure of third-party compensation, Rule 109. If you are going to receive third-party compensation, you must disclose in a what and what manner? Full and timely manner. Full and timely manner. The extent of your compensation, and you should do it timely. The timely disclosure could be verbal, couldn't it? Yeah, it could look something like this. Hey, Virginia, we're going to look at 3 houses today. House number 3 has a $5,000 bonus on it for me if you buy that house. Do I need to get that in writing?
No.
Not yet. I only have to reduce it to writing if what?
Offer.
She makes an offer on that. Ooh, let's go for a tough question. As long as we're here, you're doing great today. Okay? So she ends up buying house number 3 that has a $5,000 bonus. Would you agree I timely disclose that bonus to her? Yes. Now she's making an offer on it. I have to reduce it to writing. Where? The agency. You can put it in the agency agreement. We also have a form for this. What was I trying to trick you into saying? I was trying to trick you into saying the offer to purchase, right? But why didn't you fall for that trick? Tell me 2 provisions that absolutely cannot go into an offer to purchase. Anything regarding your compensation or anything that seeks to diminish your liability. It's all coming together now, finally, right? And you guys were nervous. Y'all got this. Slam dunk. Except those of you who are saying, I don't understand the thing he just said. Those are the ones I'm worried about. Okay. Disclosure of offers. We have a rule about this, Rule 115. You don't have to remember the rule number, but basically, do you remember what it says? I cannot disclose the terms of competing offers without the permission of the person who made the offeror. Okay? You think we'll try to trick you with this one on the exam? If we didn't, I wouldn't even feel like we were doing our jobs, to be quite honest with you. Yes, Jen?
Going back to number 5, drafting legal instruments, there were some questions that it was saying, like, if the agent was working for themselves, they
Yes.
could draft legal documents.
Okay.
Is that?
Let's listen to her question here. I'm an agent. I'm representing myself. Can I draft legal documents for that transaction? Yes.
Yeah, that was what you're
Yes.
saying on that question.
Well, here's why. You can't draft documents for others. That requires a law degree. But having said that, if you're a participant in the transaction, you can draft anything that you want to. Buyers and sellers can draft anything that they want to. I'm not recommending it, but they would not be violating the law by doing that. Do you understand the difference?
Yeah, at the time.
Okay, that's key. That is the key right there. If I'm drafting for third parties, illegal. If I'm drafting for myself, which anybody can do. Matter of fact, sometimes if the buyer comes and they ask me for a complicated form, I'm normally going to say, well, let me refer you to an attorney. I don't want to spend all that money for an attorney. You can draft it yourself if that's what you want to do, but I'm not going to do it for you because I am not an attorney. Okay? Disclosure of offers. Oh, I was right on the point of talking to you about trying to trick you on this. The trick is easy to spot though, right? I am a listing agent. We just got 3 offers. My seller suggests that I go back and just tell them how much each one of them offer. Maybe we can give them a bidding war. What's the problem with that? That's right. They're not the offeror. They're not the offeror. I need the buyer's permission in that case to disclose what the terms were, right? And they're never going to give it to me, okay? Technically, if they did, I guess it would be okay. But you have to have the permission of the offeror. Watch out for this. Not the seller, my client, okay? He's the offeree. Broker in charge. Let's talk real quickly about the broker in charge. I don't like to think that you're going to get hard questions about brokers in charge. And here's why. You're coming out of this class to be a PD, right? Can you be a broker in charge? Not for a while, and you got to take some other classes before you get there. So I don't think we're going to beat you up on this. So maybe just a couple of basics, probably things you already know. Every office where brokerage is practiced must have one and only one broker in charge. I am a sole proprietorship. I am Barnett Realty. If I practice brokerage activity, Chris Barnett has to be a broker in charge, right? I am a broker in charge of myself because I have to be if I want to do what? Practice brokerage activity. That's what the rule says. That's what the rule says. Qualifications, you must have how many years experience? 2 out of 5 full or 4 out of 5 part-time to be a broker in charge. And obviously you must be a broker as well. Take the 12-hour course when you certify that you're going to be the broker in charge. Okay? We actually have a form for this as well, Form 204. You don't have to memorize that. You just have to fill it out and send it in.
There was one like tricky question about this, and it was
Okay.
like a broker in charge of 2 different agencies in the same office.
Yeah.
Like physical location.
Yeah. Can a be a broker in charge of multiple offices? And the answer is yes, as long as they are in the same physical location. Okay. Yeah, that's what that rule is. And you know, again, you have to pick your poison sometime. If you know that, if you can remember that factoid, that's great. A broker in charge can be broker in charge of multiple offices as long as they all have the same physical location. For example, I'm broker in charge of multiple offices, but they all have the same address by house. Yeah. Okay. Let's see what else. Notice my key point there. The big thing, it's not a separate license. It's just a status. It's a designation. Okay, that's a theme that you'll see. Broker in charge responsibilities. What is the main responsibility of a broker in charge? Supervise PBs. For this class, supervise PBs. I think that's actually fair. Yes.
Hi, I'm sorry, just to go back,
Uh-huh.
I'm a little confused. The broker in charge,
Uh-huh.
there can only be one broker in charge, I thought, at an office, but if you have separate entities, because it's connected to an entity, not necessarily location, but is that not correct?
I can be a broker in charge under another broker in charge. But remember, let's say, for example, I work for ABC Realty and I have an entity, Tar Heel Realty, that requires a broker in charge. ABC doesn't have 2 brokers in charge. ABC only has 1. Tar Heel Realty only has 1. Okay? Now, the broker here will supervise me for activities that I do under the license ABC, but I will supervise activities that go on under Tar Heel Realty. Sure, my license is somewhere.
Not supervising.
Well, I'm sorry, I'd be affiliated with the, there, yes.
When I came to the Go Realty meeting we had here, we had Kyle, he's here. Okay.
Yeah,
So
the
there
one
were
that's-
4 brokers in charge up in Raleigh, so they're not designated, that's just their,
I wasn't part of that conversation, so I don't have it.
so they're just working as brokers in charge, but they are not the broker in charge up there.
That's right, the office only has 1 broker in charge.
But it's not Kyle up there, it's a different guy.
It's a different person.
Okay.
There are 4 offices, and so there are, by definition, 4 brokers in charge.
Okay.
There may be some other people who work under them
I
that
think
are
the
brokers in
reason they
charge.
said that is because they want to keep 40 PDs to like 1 broker in charge, something like that, and that's why the Raleigh one had to be considered 2 or something. Not, they weren't the broker in
Yeah.
charge, but they had 2 separate people.
The association I want you to make is 1 office, 1 big. Okay? Within an office, there could be multiple brokers in charge, but they don't supervise that office. Okay? Now, the point that I want to get here is the broker in charge's responsibilities, of which you've already nailed 1, right? That the broker in charge supervises PBs, right? Okay? And then, you know the other main duty that, the trust fund, clearly, and now let's talk about that trust account for just a moment. How many trust accounts must a firm have? How many trust accounts must a firm have?
If they're handling money,
Say again?
I mean, if they're handling money, then.
Okay, so it's two different questions, isn't it? How many trust accounts must you minimally have? Well, you could have zero. If you don't handle any trust monies, you don't need a trust account. Now, Jen, if you handle trust monies, how many trust accounts must you minimally have? One, because could you put, if your office did multiple things, could you put all your all your earnest monies into that trust account? If you did property management, could you also put your security deposits in there? Yeah. Could you also put your rents in there? Yeah.
They said for property management, you could have two, or.
Say again?
For property management, didn't say you could have two trust accounts?
Now listen to the question. The question was how many must you minimally have?
Yeah,
Minimally one. You can have as many as you want,
right.
but if you handle trust monies, you must have at least one trust account. Okay? There's only one condition where you would ever need more than one trust account. This would have been hard to pick up through your reading, and I don't know if we've said it in this class. Do you know what it is? HOA. The only time you would be required to have more than one trust account is if you also manage homeowners associations. And then you must have a separate trust account for each homeowner association. Okay, so let's go back and let's talk about important words here. All, must, only. Be suspicious of these words. How many trust accounts must I have? Well, Barnett Realty does not hold trust monies. So how many do I have? Zero. If I did, I must minimally have one. I could have more, but I must minimally have one.
Do firms realistically not have trust accounts though, like don't typically attorneys now mostly do the ones with.
Yeah, it's a liability issue as well. So some firms have chosen to not have trust accounts because of liability. Some firms still choose to have trust accounts because they think it's a good customer service. So it's a matter of policy. It's what it amounts to. Okay?
So if I manage three HOA, I'll have three of them.
At least three, yeah. Yeah. If you also have rents and security deposits, you would have to have a fourth account as well. Okay, supervisor PB maintains trust accounts. As you continue on, even though a broker in charge does not supervise brokers, there are some things I am responsible for if you are a broker. Let me explain these in brief to you and see if this makes sense.
Did you finish your must all?
I'm just telling you to look out for words
Okay.
like that. The example that I was using then, Erica, is how many trust accounts must I have? Well, I don't have any if I don't have a trust accounts. Okay? If I do, I must have at least one.
Chris, so even if you were just, Barnett Realty, and it was just you, yourself, sole proprietor, where would you put earnest money and,
And a trust account.
so you need that.
Only if I handle trust money. If I choose not to handle trust money, then I don't have to have a trust account.
What would be the option? How could you not handle trust money?
I could allow an attorney to hold any trust monies.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that happens a lot today.
Really?
Yeah. Even though, as a broker in charge, even though you're not a PB, there are some things I'm still responsible for everybody. See if this makes sense to you. I am responsible, broker in charge is responsible for all advertisement done in the name of the firm. I don't care whether you're a PB or a broker. Why? Whose listing is it? It's the firm's listing. Okay, you're out there advertising my firm. I am responsible for that. I'm also responsible for the correct practice of the agency. For all agents, regardless of whether you're PBs or brokers, right? Because whose name are you practicing in? The firm's. Yeah, I know you're practicing in your name, but you're also practicing in the name of the firm. It's the firm's client. Does that make sense? How about this one? I need to make sure everybody in the office has a current pocket. Why is that important for me, regardless of whether you're a PB or broker? If you can't get paid, I can't get paid. So it's important for me to make sure that you have taken your appropriate courses and stuff. You're independent contractors. I'm going to rely on you to do this, but at some point in June, I'm calling you to my office and I'm saying, let me check, show me your pocket card, show me. And a lot of this stuff I can check online anyway to make sure you took your CE classes and stuff like that. Okay? Does it make sense that a broker in charge would fulfill that for everybody, not just PBs? Okay, handling trust funds. This is actually the reason that I want you to have this handout as well as the slides that you have, because the slides don't do a great job on the trust fund. Now, having said that, I don't know how many questions you're going to get on the trust fund, just simply because you're not going to be bigs, but there are some basic things that I think might come up that you need to be familiar with. In other words, don't go deep, go broad on this, okay? So we're getting ready to talk about the trust account. Just nod and tell me if you understand these things. Do you understand the definition of what trust money is? Money that I am holding in a fiduciary responsibility that belongs to whom? Others. Trust monies are monies that we are holding for others. You okay with that definition? Let's go to the next bullet point then. Trust or escrow accounts, basic required features on the account. The trust account must be on demand and separate. You know what on demand means? On demand means when I need that money, I need to be able to get it now. In other words, can I put trust monies in a CD? No, because CDs have a maturity date, right? So it's more like a checking account that I can get it from immediately. Now here's important. We're going to talk more about this. No, let's talk about it now. Separate. What do I mean by separate? You cannot commingle your business funds with your trust monies. Did everybody run across that in your reading? Go ahead, Ann.
I was wondering, does that mean like if I bank normally at BB&T, that I have to have a trust fund in a totally different bank?
No,
Or
just a
can't
different
be in a
account.
account?
Just a different account. So, commingling. Commingling means to mix your practice funds, your operating funds, with your trust funds. Remember, trust funds are holy. They are money belonging to others, okay? Now, you say, well, that's fairly simple. We used to ask a difficult question on this. I don't think it's likely to come up today, but let me give you an idea of what it looked like in the past. Based on what I just said, do you think this is a true statement? You should not put any of your own money into the trust account. True or not? Okay. The answer is false, right? The answer is false because you can put enough money in there to cover fees. Think about this. If I'm supposed to have $10,000 and a bank fee of $35 comes out, I don't have $10,000 in there. So I can put enough in there to cover fees. Okay? So watch the way we also used to ask the question, Jen. Is this a true statement? I can put up to $100 of my own money in there, into the trust account. Is that a true statement? I can put up to $100 of my own money in a trust account. The answer to this question is, I can put enough of my own money into the trust account to cover fees. That's what the answer is. The reason that $100 is confusing is it's actually stated that you can put up to $100 or whatever the bank requires for fees. So my point is, the answer to this question has absolutely everything to do with enough to cover whatever the bank requires for fees.
But why are you not gonna charge?
Wait, so what was there?
Who's giving you the trust, and why are you gonna pay your own?
It's just, if you have a bank account that charges fees, they charge it to the account holder, not to the, not on those.
So wait, what was the correct answer to that question?
The correct answer is, you can put enough of your own money into the trust account to cover whatever the bank requires for fees.
Right, you said that even with zero, that up to.
Well, zero is not correct. $100 by itself is not correct. The correct answer has everything to do with what the bank requires for fees. Okay, now one last point on this. You cannot put enough of your own money into the trust account to avoid fees. Okay, have you ever seen one of those accounts that says if you have a minimum balance of $1,000, you don't have to pay any fees? So I can't just put $1,000 of my own money in there to avoid the fees, but I can to cover the fees. And we have ledgers and stuff that we can account for this money. It's simple to do. What a lot of firms will do is they'll actually tie the trust account to their regular operating account and say when a fee comes out here, it's just charged to this account. And that makes the accounting on it a little bit easier. What you'll find out about these trust accounts is it's the accounting and the way it has to be done. That's why some people have opted not to have these accounts unless absolutely necessary. Okay, so what was the answer to the question? You can put enough of your money. It's considered permissible commingling to put enough of your own money in there to cover fees. Okay? All right, what else I want to tell you about Taco? How about this? How about this? As a property manager, I want you to think about this. As a property manager, I collect security deposits, right? Put them in there, they're holding, I don't touch them. I collect rents, but think about rents, I'm collecting for someone else. The landlord's eventually going to want some money, right? They're going to want disbursements. So I'm collecting, all these rents are coming into my trust account. Why my trust account? Because they're money belonging to others, right? They have to go through my trust account. So here's the deal. Do I get to keep any of that money?
As a property.
Yeah. Yes! I'm charging them a percentage, right? As a property manager, I'm charging them 8%.
So the landlord wouldn't have to.
Now, what happens is, the money's in my trust account. So what I do is I pay myself, just like I pay any other expense. And then I disperse. So here's the deal. I've got that money sitting in my trust account right now. I only manage like half a dozen properties, so it's $128, okay? Now, having said that, I'm just thinking to myself, I'll just leave it in there, and at some point in the future, I'll write myself a check for it. Now, what problem do I have?
Now you're hoping.
Now, I'm co-mingling, right? Because it is what we call reverse co-mingling. I'm leaving the money in, but it's still my money though, right? So we're going to have to flush it out on a regular basis, typically a monthly basis. Disperse, pay myself, pay out any other fees that are necessary, and then every month account for this, do trial balances and stuff like that. That clearly is over the level of expense.
Jamie, because of the current practices, it's all one month, strictly on a monthly basis.
Yeah.
You have to share with your proof of contract.
Yeah.
And tax purposes.
Well, because of real estate commission rule. There's rules for handling this. Let me give you one more fine point on that. Do you remember earlier in the semester, see if you can answer this question. If you can answer it, you don't have to write it down, okay? Can a firm have an interest-bearing trust account? Do you remember the answer to this question? Yes, you can have an interest-bearing trust account as long as the parties have acknowledged it, they're aware of it, okay? So you can have an interest-bearing trust account. But I suggested to you earlier in the year, most firms don't have an interest-bearing trust account. Can you see why?
Because you have to make
As you're
sure they-
accruing interest, every month you're going to have to account for that money. So last month you made 18 cents in interest, all right? So now you have to account for it, you have to flush it out, and you have to pay an accountant $45 an hour to do it for you, okay? So most firms don't have interest-bearing trust accounts because of that very reason. Could you? Yeah, as long as you have permission at firms. Yeah.
I ran into a tricky question about the type of bank that it can be at.
Okay.
So it was like all of them, all the answers were pretty similar. And then there was one about a credit union.
It has to be a Fed. Her question is, where can trust accounts go? So let's go ahead and just take that on as well. It may come up a little bit later, but let's go ahead and try it. There are actually three things I want you to keep together. We've already hit on two of them. One was the idea of co-mingling, right? Okay. The second one had to do with an interest-bearing trust account. And she ended up nailing the third one as well. So we might as well go ahead and knock this out as long as we're talking about trust accounts. Trust accounts must be in a federally insured bank or savings and loan. Must be in a federally insured bank or savings and loan, not a credit union. And it has to be a bank or savings and loan that is licensed, that is, what's the word that they use? That is authorized, legally authorized to practice in the state of North Carolina.
This just might be ignorance on my part, but why not a credit union?
It probably has something to do with their insurance charter. is what
So
my
credit
guess is.
unions are out. No
Correct.
credit union.
Just like CDs would be out as well because of a certain stipulation, you couldn't put it in CD. Just because of the rule, it doesn't qualify. A federally insured bank or S&L legally authorized to practice in the state of North Carolina. I hope that last little piece is not going to be important to you for test purposes, but let me tell you why it was important for test purposes. It used to be that your trust account, if the property was in North Carolina, the money had to be in the state of North Carolina as well. Having said that, you recognize that there are a lot of companies that do business on both sides of the border in North Carolina, South Carolina, and also North Carolina and Virginia. So could you have property that you're managing in North Carolina that you actually kept the money in a South Carolina trust account? A few years ago, the answer was no. It had to be in North Carolina. But today, it can be in a bank in South Carolina that is legally authorized to do business in the state of North Carolina. And here's the key point. Here's actually the key point. They allow audit privileges to the North Carolina Real Estate Commission. The bank has to allow audit privileges to the state of North Carolina. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
The Real Estate Commission walks in and shows them their badge, and they open up the account. Remember, it's a trust account, right? Money you're holding for others. The commission has to be able to go in and audit that account anytime they want to. Bless you. What are the 3 points I ultimately wanted you to get out of that? Code of England, you got it hands down, right? Interest-bearing trust account, that's easy. Legally authorized to do business in the state of North Carolina, a banker SNL. But done. Done on that topic. Okay, the conversation went a little more in depth than what I had planned to, but that was going to come out anyway. So I'm glad we got it out of the way. Matter of fact, look at what B says. North Carolina Bank or Savings and Loan. So we kind of talked about that while we were there. Obviously, I wrote this before the most recent law change. Designation of trust account or FDIC and insurance. Let's talk about the designation of the trust account real quickly. This is very simple. Your trust account, your checks, your bank statements, your deposit slips, they will all say that this is a trust account. Okay, it must be easily identified by anyone that this is a trust account as opposed to your business account. Okay, the commission tells a story about someone paying fees for their agents. It was a small firm that they had like 10 agents. Back in the day, the fees were only $40. So they just wrote a check for $400. All their fees are now covered for their agents. They don't have to worry about somebody expiring, right? All this was a great plan until they realized that they sent the check to the commission from their trust account. They sent a check to the commission from their trust account. How did the commission know that the check was on the trust account? It said trust account on it because it was required by rule to say trust account on there. Okay, not everybody who is a broker in charge is a genius. Okay, I don't know if you're aware of that.
What is FDIC?
Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Okay, and again, we can get deep into that, but it's not necessary in this class. When is a trust account required? We talked about this only if you handle trust monies, and if you have trust monies, look at number of trust accounts. If required, you only have to have one. You could have more, but you're only required to have one. Unless you have HOAs, then you must have a minimum of one for every HOA you manage. Everybody remember that conversation? Good. So all this is coming up. Code of England prohibited. We nailed that. Bank service charges. You can put enough money in the trust account to cover bank charges. Interest-bearing trust account. Nailed that one. Brokering charges responsible for a trust account. Let's stop right there for just a minute. Okay, this is obvious, right? The broker in charge is responsible for the trust account, right? Can the broker in charge delegate that role? Yes. I have a lot of friends that they know that they're not good with these numbers and they're going to screw it up. So they hire an accountant or a bookkeeper to perform this function. However, who's always responsible? The broker in charge. There was a great story, not a great story for this guy, but there was a great story where a broker in charge of a large development company in this area, he hired his best friend from college who had a master's degree in accounting and was a CPA to handle his trust account. They handled huge amounts of trust monies. The broker in charge ended up finding out that the guy had been embezzling from him for about 7 years. Over the course of this time, the guy had embezzled $1 million. $1 million. Now, this broker, he was a good friend with him. This broker, I mean, you think that's a broker in charge. Who better to handle your trust account than your best friend, who is a CPA, knows your business inside out? But what happened was this Vic never even checked his accounts because of this. It became obvious when they started writing bad checks. You don't need to understand the math behind this, but I will tell you, it is impossible to write a bad check from a properly run trust account. It's impossible to do it. So when this started coming up, Broker in charge ended up losing his license for 2 years. He was suspended for 2 years because of this, okay? You know, part of his argument has to be, well, good gosh, I hired this guy, I didn't do anything wrong, but who's always responsible? Even if you delegate this role, the broker in charge is in fact responsible. He should have been doing forensic audits on a yearly basis. He should have been reconciling the trust account and stuff like that. He did none of it because he was his best friend.
What about if attorney managing what they give the money to?
See, that's not, they give it to the attorney, that's his trust account, okay? He's responsible to the bar for that.
Just to try something else in this. So when he was suspended,
He was suspended for 2 years, recommend since you're
so
suspended.
at that point of suspension, everybody in that firm was suspended until they.
Well, they weren't suspended, but and Emily's question goes to this. Okay, we are a firm. I am your broker in charge. What's the status of your license, Andrea? Just make something up.
It's active.
It's active and you're a PB or a broker?
I'm a broker.
You're a broker, okay. If her broker in charge gets suspended or goes inactive for some reason, because she's a broker, just because I lost my license, her license will not go inactive. Her license will stay active. Why will her license stay active? Because she's a broker. Because she's a broker. The problem is, I was broker in charge of this office. So her license will be active, but it will be active at her home address for lack of having this office having that broker in charge. Okay? Now watch what would have been different. Lauren, you're in my office. Are you a broker or a PB?
PB.
She's a PB. The minute that her broker in charge goes inactive or suspended, what's going to happen to her license? It's going to go inactive for failure to have a broker in charge. Okay? So what happens is brokers don't automatically go inactive, but their license is moved to their home address. PBs will immediately go inactive the minute that the broker in charge is gone.
So that, what happens to the broker? Because you're going to be suspended for 2 years or something.
They'll get another broker in charge. And this is why you have that emergency provision for the broker in charge. They all have to fill out the paperwork again and send it to the commission.
But who's going to hire the PB, the owner, the officer?
Well, typically what happens when this happens, a new broker in charge comes in, the same people stay. Sometimes people will get disappointed and they will use that as an opportunity to leave the firm, but typically they just bring in a new bid, fill out paperwork, send it to commission, and they're back up and running that quickly. That's why they have kind of that emergency rule that allows you 120 days to take the class.
Well, what happens
To transactions that are in properties.
Nothing really. I mean, there's going to be a little bit of a lapse there, but typically speaking, the commission understands. Yeah, it's not going to make you enough compensation because of that. In most cases, what's happened is you've already earned the compensation because they're already under contract, and typically a new bid will be appointed so that you don't have to do brokerage activities during the time that there's not a bid. It usually can happen fairly instantaneously. One of the things about when you go out and find a bid to start working, when you guys go out and find a bid to start working, you're going to go in, interview with the bid, you like them, they like you, yes, you're welcome to work here. The minute that a broker in charge says you can work here, you are working there, okay? What happens to happen then is you fill out paperwork, you send it to the commission, and if it doesn't come back within 30 days, you have to stop. But the understanding is, it's okay, you're active the minute that you have your license in your hand, and a broker in charge says, I will supervise you, I will take responsibility. The paperwork takes a few days to catch up.